Hello everyone and welcome to another video by Centipede Geek. Today I'm going to talk about the NBC original television series by the name of Hannibal. I'm going to discuss my thoughts and opinions upon episode 8 titled Fromage. And without any further ado, let's go to get to it, shall we? So pretty much what we have going on in episode 8 of Hannibal is we have, of course, Hugh Dancy playing our main character, Will Graham. And in this episode, Will Graham is starting to go a little crazy, I guess you could say. I mean, previously in several of the episodes, he's been having hallucinations, but the hallucinations in this episode are starting to get more extreme now. He's starting to hear things such as, minor spoilers coming out, just so you guys know. He starts to hear things such as a raccoon in the wall of his house. He starts to hear, he owns several dogs, you know, and he starts to hear several of his dogs howling. He thinks his dogs are being killed, so he runs out to the field. He's in the middle of a murder investigation in this episode. He hears another dog howling. So the hallucinations you're having are starting to get more and more severe. So we have the character of Will Graham becoming more and more unstable in this episode. But the main gist of this episode is actually about a guy that was actually introduced in the previous episode, and that's a guy by the name of Tobias. And Tobias is actually a friend of one of Dr. Hannibal Lecter's patients. And he was, you know, this guy, and this guy is actually a serial killer. He kills people with violin strings that he makes out of cat guts. I thought that was a really interesting thing, a very strange thing. I haven't really ever seen that before, but it's just a really nice, interesting aspect. That it was just a great aspect. There's actually a great fight scene at the end of this episode. Major spoilers coming up now. But there's a great fight scene at the end, around the end of this episode with, excuse me. There's a great fight scene at the end of this episode with Tobias's character and Dr. Hannibal Lecter's character, because pretty much what this episode is about is we have Tobias and Hannibal Lecter, and Tobias knows what Dr. Hannibal Lecter is up to, because Tobias followed Hannibal home one night and found out what he did. And so what happens is Dr. Hannibal Lecter invites him over to his house, and they both realize what they have to do. And Hannibal Lecter tells him personally, he's like, you know, he tells him, you know, in the exact wording, I invited you here so I could kill you. And before then, Tobias tells him, you know, I wanted to kill you also. So they have like this huge fight scene where pretty much Tobias has this, you know, has his, you know, violin strings made out of cat guts, and he's swinging them around, and it was just a great scene. And he actually gives Dr. Hannibal Lecter a run for his money. I mean, yes, Tobias does die in the episode, but you know he gave Hannibal a nice run for his money. He beat the crap out of him, pushed him over, broke things, but in the end, Dr. Hannibal Lecter took a statue to his head and just hit him over the head with it. But it was a nice little fight scene. I really enjoyed that segment. You know, episode 8, Fromage, for the NBC original television series by the name of Hannibal, is definitely my favorite episode so far in the episodic saga known as Hannibal. I really enjoyed this episode. This is just a stellar show. I mean, we have Hugh Dancy playing Will Graham, and Will Graham in this episode it's just great. I mean, the screenplay, you know, the dialogue in the series is great. It's one of the running things, and probably one of my most favorite things about Hannibal is that the dialogue we have in the show is just so, you know, it's written in a really stellar way where every line is just a really quotable line. I mean, every line, for me at least, is a very rememberable line that it makes me want to look up the script of the show just so I can see some of the words I may not have remembered, so I can just remember the lines, because it's just, you know, Brian Fuller is the one who created the series, and he's the overall writer of the series, Hannibal on NBC, and I think Brian Fuller just did a really nice job with writing the screenplay and that sort of thing. And then the character of Tobias in this episode, I really enjoyed him. You know, he was only in episode 7 and episode 8 titled Fromage, but, you know, for the 2 episodes that he was in, I really enjoyed him. He just had a nice, sort of weird sense about him. He had a really nice, you know, backstory about him where he killed a guy by shoving a huge, you know, violin or cello into the guy's body, and then he slit the guy's throat and played him by using playing his vocal cords. Pretty much, he cauterized the chords so he could actually, you know, play them like playing an instrument, so he could create a sound. That was a really nice, interesting mythology that the episode had as a whole, and I also just really like that aspect about the episode. So everything about this episode was stellar. Of course, as always, Mads Mikkelsen, who plays the role of Dr. Hannibal Lecter in the NBC series known as Hannibal. He was great as always. He always is great, especially in that fight scene. Just every time he delivered his dialogue. And the great thing about this episode was that in this episode, he's going to a psychiatrist, as you know, just to kind of, that way he stays good in the psychiatry that he does. And he starts to realize that he wants to become friends with Will Graham. So I really like that. So they're smiling at each other for the first time and having a really good relationship, actually, because as always, this show is a very psychological show. So I just really like that aspect about it. Also, it was really cool just seeing Hannibal finally realizes that he wants to be friends with Will Graham, and Will Graham is friends with Hannibal. So that friendship thing comes in play in this episode. We also have a romance brewing between our two characters. I forget, but the main girl that was signed onto the case to psychoanalyze Will Graham's character, she is, they're starting to have somewhat of feelings for each other, but she doesn't believe that she's right for him, so they don't actually start to have a relationship. But they do kiss in the episode, so we have that plot, that subplot going on. But overall, best scene out of the episode was those last 10 minutes where they had that just real nice fight scene, and he actually gave himself up to the cops and told them what happened. Now, of course, he lied to them and told them that Tobias was the one who killed his patient when Hannibal Lecter was actually the one who cracked his neck. That was a great scene also. But it was just really cool. The promo for next week's episode looks intense too. It looks like some big things are going to happen. Anyways, that's pretty much my thoughts and opinions on the NBC original television series by the name of Hannibal. Next week's episode is episode 9, known as Trial Normand, and it comes on May 23rd of 2013. As always, Channel 2, NBC, 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock for everyone else. Once again, thanks for watching the video by Centipede Geek for the NBC original television series by the name of Hannibal for episode 8 titled Fromage. Once again, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to my page below, and I'll see you guys later with more videos by Centipede Geek.